Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Reagan and this is my channel, Ray Reads, and today I'm doing my October wrap up. Yeah. So I actually read a total of 12 books in the month of October. I did DNF one of those, but I did finish all the rest of the 11 math. And I'm also in the middle of reading like 3 other books right now, but I didn't want to include them in this wrap up because it's November 2nd and I still have not finished them. So I'm just going to include that in my November wrap up when that comes. But yeah, so let's just jump into it. So the first book that I read this month was Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. I am reading all of the Harry Potter books as a series on my channel. I have been reading about one a month just so I can like spread it out a little bit more, but I finished this one at the very beginning of the month and I do have a reading vlog for it because I've been vlogging all of these experiences, but I will link it above in the cards and down below in the description as well. I gave this book 5 stars. How could I not? I definitely go into a way more in-depth review in that video. If you're curious, you can click on the link above and watch it, but I did love it so much. I gave it 5 stars. I did have a lot of frustrations with this book, but I had a lot of discussion about it in the comments of that video actually with some other people, just about how Harry was kind of being annoying in this book, but I totally understand it's because of the trauma that he went through at the end of Goblet of Fire, but I was a frustrating vlog because I was reading about him and he was making me mad. But Ron Weasley is one of my absolute all-time favorite fictional characters, so of course I love this book. I gave it 5 stars. Just go watch the vlog if you want a little bit more depth to that review. Then I picked up the audio Don't You Forget About Me by Mahari McFarlane. I hope I'm saying her name right. This book follows a girl. This is the book I DNF'd, so I don't really know much about it. It was like a 12-hour audiobook and we were like 2.5 hours in and the main characters hadn't even met each other yet and I was like, I can't do this. So I DNF'd it, but, and I didn't rate it obviously because I usually don't rate books that I DNF unless they're horrible and that's why I DNF'd them. But usually if I just DNF'd it out of boredom, I don't rate them just because I don't think that's very fair. So I did not rate it, but basically it's about a girl who is like dating, or she's engaged to this guy, or maybe they're dating, I don't know, but she walks in on him cheating on her, and basically she goes and leaves that apartment and basically she needs a new job or something like that, so she gets hired on at this bar, and the guy that owns the bar is a friend of hers from high school that she used to have a connection with. I got 2 hours into it and I was like, I can't do this anymore and this is boring. I wasn't feeling it. Maybe I just wasn't in the mood, but I was like, I can't sit through another 10 hours of this. So I moved on from that. So I DNF'd that book, but it wasn't horrendous. Like I think that people might enjoy it, but it was just too slow. It just wasn't for me. Then I picked up another Amo Jones book. You guys know I read Sicko by Amo Jones last month and it was so good. I gave it 5 stars. It was amazing. So of course I had to pick up The Silver Swan, which is the first book in the Elite Kings Club series by Amo Jones, and I gave this book 3 stars. It was not as good as Sicko in my opinion. I did start it and this is a series which I also did not know going into it, and I wish I would have known that because I probably wouldn't have started it. I thought they were all standalones and it followed like different guys from the Elite Kings Club, but no, apparently that doesn't happen till later. But basically it is about this girl named Madison who I think she moves in with her dad, and her dad is just now getting married to a new woman and she has a son, and so she moves in with him and his new wife and the new wife's son, who is now her stepbrother, and he is a part of a group called the Elite Kings Club where it's just like all of these dudes and like really intense, I don't know, but they're in high school and basically crazy weird things start happening to her. Like I don't even know, what does the description of this book say? Well, basically there's like 10 of these guys and they're all like bad boys and they're just crazy and they're all like kind of hitting on her, and it's a dark romance. I literally suck at this. But basically one of the guys is Bishop, who is like kind of the love interest of this book, which is kind of confusing because at the beginning I thought it was going to be the stepbrother, but it kind of went into a roundabout way that like we were meeting Bishop, who is the love interest for this book. But basically, you know, there's so many secrets and there's so many lies and all that's being uncovered, and there's like danger, and it's a dark romance. It's great. It's a good time. If you like that kind of stuff, you should totally try it. I gave it 3 stars because like it wasn't amazing, but it wasn't bad either. It was pretty average of a book. Like I don't think I would think about it when thinking about books, I guess. It was just okay. So I gave it 3 stars, but I would like to continue on with the series because I think I'd like to read more about the other guys in the club other than just Bishop and Madison. So I think I would definitely pick this up again soon, but it was just okay. The next book that I picked up was Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. I am currently hosting a Percy Jackson read-along with 4 of my other really good Booktube friends, and we are hosting a read-along for this. So if you want to join that, you definitely should. All of the information will be down in the description as always in all my videos. But basically we had our first live show, I think it was at the beginning of October for this book, so I read it like a few days before, and I gave it 5 stars. It was so sweet. I've never read this series before. Most of the hosts have except for me and Kirsten, but it was so good. It was just so wholesome. It was so sweet. I loved Percy. His character is so sarcastic and I'm just here for that. I think this book it handles a lot of heavy topics and things that need to be talked about, and I really appreciate Rick Riordan for bringing up these heavy topics in a middle grade children's book. I think that's so cool and that's so neat, and I wish I would have had this book when I was in 5th grade so I could have related to Percy and Annabeth and Grover and all of the people in this book. But it was so amazing, so wholesome. I gave it 5 stars. You should join us for the next live show. It's going to be on the 3rd book, The Titan's Curse, and I don't remember the date for it. I think it's November 22nd, which is a Sunday, on Nitty Ready Reads' channel. Again, everything will be linked down below, so don't worry, but you should totally read it and join us. So yeah. Then of course I was in the mood for another dark romance, so I picked up Ecstasy by KV Rose. This was actually a recommendation from Naima Reads, who is one of my best friends ever. I love her. So she told me to pick up this book, and of course I listened. Why would I not? So I started reading this book and I gave it 3 stars. It was okay. I didn't absolutely love it, but I understood why Naima loved it. So basically this book follows a girl named Zara, and basically she is dating a guy named Alex, and they're in a really toxic relationship at the beginning of the book. The first chapter is literally insane. Like I read the first chapter and I was like, what am I reading? It was literally crazy. And so I was like, oh gosh, it's a ride. It's a ride. The first chapter is a ride, so just be prepared for that. But basically she's in a really toxic relationship with Alex, and you see a glimpse of that at the beginning of this story, but you don't get their previous relationship. You just see a glimpse of the toxicity of that relationship. And basically his roommate Eli kind of steps in, and that's kind of where the story takes off. So Zara is actually a drug addict. She's been to rehab, and when we get into the story, she's already been to rehab, but she's already doing drugs again, but she's not telling anyone, pretending that she's fine. So she's coping with these drugs, and she's trying to be in this really toxic relationship with Alex, but she's starting to feel an attraction towards his roommate Eli and doesn't really know where that's coming from. So that's just where the story goes, and it takes off from there. And it is a bit of a love triangle, which you guys know on my channel, I don't love love triangles, but this book was okay. Again, the reason I don't love love triangles is because I always choose the wrong guy to root for. I always think it's this guy that's gonna be it in the end, and then it's the other guy. So I just feel like cheated a lot of times when I read these books, because by the time I get to the end of the book, I haven't cared for the guy that wins in the end, because I thought he was gonna be the guy that loses. So basically I don't love love triangles, but this book was okay. I gave it 3 stars because again, it wasn't amazing, but it wasn't bad either. It was really kind of just right in the middle for me. I did enjoy the book. I mean, the experience, I guess. It was just a lot. I also don't think I enjoy reading about people who abuse drugs, maybe. I don't know how to say it. I just like felt kind of triggered, which is like weird because I don't have any triggers when it comes to that. But I think my heart just really broke for the main character, and it just made me really sad. And I think it's hard for me to read a book when I can't love and respect and be like, oh my god, I'm obsessed with this main character. So when I don't usually love the main character, it's kind of hard. And I wanted to shake her and just be like, stop doing drugs. Like, what are you doing? You're hurting yourself. Like, she would make these dumb decisions because she was high on these drugs, and I think that was just frustrating for me as a reader, and so that did kind of influence my rating of this book, but it was just insane. It was a dark romance. Please do not go into this if you don't enjoy dark romances. If you are, this is a very rated R book. Do not go into this if you are not comfortable with that. There's so many trigger warnings for so many things in this book, so please don't go into it if you are faint of heart. If you like more lighthearted romances, do not go into this book. I am warning you. So it was good. I gave it 3 stars. I will probably pick up something again by KV Rose. I'm actually planning on reading These Monstrous Ties at some point by her, but this book just wasn't a 5-star for me. Then I picked up The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I don't have my actual physical book because I already gave it to my mom. I absolutely love, okay, what's happening here? What's happening here? All right, please ignore this, what's happening here. I literally can't fix it because the sun is dumb sometimes. Okay, so I picked up The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. This book was so amazing. This might be my favorite book I've read in 2020. I absolutely adored this book. I actually made a reading vlog for this book and Anxious People by Frederick Bachman, and I will link that above in the cards and down below in the description box as well. But basically, I read a couple books that were bound to make me cry. And I vlogged my experience. So I read Addie LaRue, which is about a girl who in the 1700s makes a deal with the devil basically, and she just wants to live her life. She doesn't want to be held down or married to a man just to survive. And so basically she makes a deal with the devil and he agrees she can live forever and do as she pleases, but basically she won't be remembered by anyone. And she didn't know the deal she was making when she made it, but she made the deal, and that's how her life continues and goes on from there. She's not remembered by anyone. People forget her immediately the moment she walks off the door, and it's really heartbreaking and really sad. And I think you get so connected to the character that it's just like so heartbreaking that when she feels pain, you also feel pain. But basically the story kind of picks up when she is in New York 300 years later, and she runs into a guy in the bookstore and he remembers her. So it's very sweet. It's just so heart-wrenching, but it's so good, and it was amazing. I have no words for this. If you want a little bit more in-depth discussion on this book, definitely watch the vlog where I read this book, but it was amazing, 5 stars. Then I listened to The Butterfly Project by Emma Scott on audio, and this book was so sweet. I gave it 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. This book follows a girl, I don't remember her name sadly, but basically when she was a child, her sister got abducted in a grocery store and like taken into a truck and was like driving off, and she was like chasing her sister, but they never made it to her, and her sister ended up dying. They ended up catching the abductor, but he was like, had already killed her sister at that point. So he ended up in jail, and basically fast forward years later, she's like in her mid-20s and she is trying to make a name for herself in New York. She wants to be a comic book writer, and she comes up with a comic book where it's called The Butterfly Project, and it's just so sweet. But she runs into this guy, and basically she is like on her way out of New York. Like she is literally on her way to the station to go back to Nevada, I think is where she came from. I don't know, Los Angeles, I think. But basically she's on her way home because she doesn't have anywhere to live. She has no money. She has to go home. But she runs into this guy, and he's kind of down on his luck as well. And so basically she's like, why don't we just be roommates? So she moves in with this guy, and they just kind of take on life together. But he is a convicted felon. He committed a crime when he was younger, maybe like a few years before, and he's really heartbroken about it. And so this is just an emotional love story. It was very good. It wasn't a 5-star read or anything like phenomenal or anything that was like life-changing or life-altering, but it was definitely an enjoyable read for me, so I did give it 4 stars. Next, I picked up Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. I read this book online actually, and then later in the month, my sweet baby MG sent this to me in the mail. Just such a sweetheart. So I'm excited to actually go back through and read it with the like actual comic book pages, because I read it online and it was black and white, but this is like kind of like green colored. I'm so excited to read this. This is driving me crazy. Should I switch? All right, so I switched because that thing was driving me crazy. I usually don't film like, this is kind of weird seating, but it's fine. So I picked up Heartstopper, loved it. It was so good. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I read Heartstopper Volume 1, and then I also read Heartstopper Volume 2, but I don't have Volume 2 in a physical copy. But this book was so amazing. It was just so sweet. Basically, it follows Charlie and Nick, I think. Yeah, Nick. So it follows Charlie and Nick is struggling with his own identity and his own feelings, and he's like a year older, I think, than Charlie, but Charlie is already gay, and he's come out to his school, I believe. Like, everyone already knows he's gay. But basically, he's had a crush on Nick for a while, and I think at the beginning of the book, they end up as like lab partners, and Nick just like befriends this guy, Charlie, and they start spending a lot of time together. And then Nick kind of has an identity crisis and just has to kind of figure out his own identity and his own feelings and the way that he feels about himself and the way that he feels about others. And this is just a really beautiful coming of age story. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's so short, if you can't tell. It's a graphic novel, so it went by so quick. I think I read this book in like 30 minutes, but it was so sweet and heartwarming. Please pick this book up. Next up, I read Anxious People by Frederick Bachman. This was also for that vlog where I read Addie LaRue, which was emotional books that make me cry, and I did cry a lot, actually. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. It was so amazing. It was so good and so raw and real and honest, and I loved it. It was the first thing I've ever read by Frederick Bachman, and I will never not read anything by Frederick Bachman because I want to read his entire backlist now. The writing was beautiful. I loved the way that he explained the human experience and just discussed the fact that normal people have everyday hurts, and I think we need to be more careful about how we treat others and be more conscious about the fact that the people around us are struggling with things, and even though they might not seem that deep to us, or we might not notice that they're really going through something, everyone is struggling and everyone has hurts and everyone is going through something. And so I think it's really important to remember that, and I think this book was such a good reminder of that and such a good challenge to us as humanity. So I thoroughly enjoyed that book. I gave it 5 stars. I'm a firm believer everyone should read this. It was so sweet. It was so precious. Again, if you want a more in-depth review, you can watch the vlog where I talk more about it. Then I picked up Behind Closed Doors by B.A. Paris. I picked this book up for the Prose Before Bros book club, which is the book club that I host with my best friend Kara from Books with Kara. I will link her channel down below, and all of our book club information will be linked down below, like our Discord and our Instagram and Twitter, so you guys can follow us. But basically, we read this book this month and had our live show at the very end of the month and discussed it. I gave this book 3 stars. It was just okay. This was a reread for me. I had actually already read this before, like I think a couple years ago. I gave it 5 stars a couple years ago, but I wasn't critically rating books. So this time around I gave it 3 stars. It was just okay. There was a lot of issues with it. I just didn't feel very attached to the characters. I didn't really love them. Well, obviously I didn't love the guy because, you know, but I didn't love the female, the main character. But basically this is about a couple, Jack and Grace, and basically it flips between past and present. It just follows their relationship, and it seems super perfect and super just no issues from the outside looking in, but then you get that inside looking out view and things aren't always what they seem. So it just follows this couple and kind of their journey into the relationship, and also once they are married. So that's kind of all I can say, but it is pretty good. I gave it 3 stars. It was enjoyable. Okay, we're back to our normal view because the sun has decided to work with me. Sorry, this is kind of all over the place, but yeah. So the next book that I read was Percy Jackson and the Sea of Monsters. Again, this was for our Percy Jackson read along. We actually had our live show yesterday on Sunday for this book, and it was on my channel. So if you're interested in rewatching that, you can scroll down through my videos and find it. It'll probably be like 2 videos before this. But basically, I gave this book 5 stars. I think after discussing it though with my friends, I decided to switch my rating to a 4-star rating. This book was really good and really enjoyable, but I do think I enjoyed the first one better, and there were some things I didn't love about this book, but I'm still ready and so willing to continue on with the series because I did really enjoy it. But I gave it 4 stars just because it just wasn't what the first book was. It kind of felt a little bit repetitive with the overarching arc of like going on a quest and coming home and then everything's good, but it did leave a bit on a cliffhanger, which I did enjoy more than the first book when it didn't end on a cliffhanger. Yeah, this book is just wholesome. It's just sweet. I enjoyed it, honestly. Also, Mare from Mare Reads said in the live show that Grover was like not in this one at all until like the very end, and I was like, girl, you're right. Why didn't I think about that? And Grover is one of my favorite characters. He is the humor of this book. He's the heart of it, and so that definitely affected my rating. So I did give this book 4 stars, but yeah, you should read it if you're interested in joining us. So that was all the books that I read in October. I had way more books that I wanted to read and way more books that I did not get to, but it was still altogether a really good reading month. I want to do even better next month. I have a very ambitious TBR next month. If you're interested in watching my November TBR, I will link it above and also down below. But I think I only picked 4 books on that TBR, but currently my TBR is at like, I think like 10 or 11 books, and they're all like this thick, so I'm scared. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to my channel down below, and it will also be in the corner of the screen. I think it's on this side. It's always on one of the corners. I'm stupid, so I don't know which one, but I think it's on this corner. It is always on the corner of my screen, so you can always click subscribe at any time. Also, don't forget to always check the description box below. It has all the relevant links as well as my social media and my Amazon wishlist if you want to support me and my channel. Don't forget to check back to my channel later on this week or turn on the post notifications if you want to be alerted when new videos come out. Well, I think that's all for this video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.
She's a Mona Lisa. Everyone's lining up to see her. There must be something.